Hey guys, hopefully you have just watched the video about DNA fingerprinting and you know what it is and how it works. In that video, they showed you that if you had collected maybe blood from a crime scene and you had run a DNA fingerprint of that blood, you could then compare it to three people that you suspected could have committed that crime. That would be suspect number 1, 2, and 3 here on the right hand side. And you can tell by looking at it really easily that suspect 2 is the one that did it because the banding pattern on suspect 2 exactly matches the banding pattern in the blood that was found at the crime scene. So suspect 2 is the guy you'd want to arrest. Now, there's a little bit more that you can tell from this that they don't tell you about in the video. If you look at suspect 1 here, he also has a banding pattern that matches both the crime scene and suspect 2. And another one right here that matches the crime scene and suspect 2, and another one down here, and another one down here. But now not all of his banding patterns match, so he didn't commit the crime, but he could be kin to, related to, suspect number 2. Maybe it's his brother, maybe it's his cousin. And you can take that a step further, and sometimes they do, if they're trying to figure out who a child's father is. If a mother's unsure which of these three guys is the child's father, they can run a DNA fingerprint on all the people involved and figure out who the father was. So the child here, notice, is not going to have a banding pattern that exactly matches the mother or any of these fathers because it's a different person. But the child can't have a banding pattern that didn't either come from the mom or the dad in some way. So every one of the child's bands in his fingerprint here had to either come from the mother or the father. So if you look at the child here, the second band down on his definitely came from his mom. This one in the middle of his definitely came from his mom. This one at the bottom of his definitely came from his mom. But the other ones, like the two right above the bottom one here, they did not come from mom. She didn't have those. So it had to have come from dad. So let's look at the three dads here. Dad 1 couldn't have been the father because he only had one of those two bands. And Dad 2 is the same way. He only had one of those two bands. But Dad 3 over here had both of those missing bands. And let's see, Dad also has this missing band that the mother doesn't have. He's got it right there. And so that Dad 3 has contributed the bands that the mother didn't have, and he is the father of that child. Keep that in mind today. It'll come in handy for today's crime scene investigation. Now, in this lesson, you're going to be working your way through an imaginary crime scene investigation. It could be a murder. We're not sure yet, but the police think someone may have been killed. Now, in this picture, you can see the person who's missing. This is the case of the missing restaurant owner, and this is the missing restaurant owner. He was last seen in his restaurant office the night he vanished, and no one has seen him again. Now, witnesses inside the restaurant said they heard noises coming from his office just before the restaurant closed that night. The restaurant owner, though, has never been found, and the police are beginning to think he may have been murdered. Now, the police have brought in a suspect for questioning that they think may have been involved. The suspect worked for the restaurant, but it was his day off, so he wasn't at work that day. Witnesses said, though, that they saw him in an alley near the restaurant the night the restaurant owner disappeared. Now, the suspect says that he was just walking his dog, and his dog got away from him, broke the leash, and it may have bit somebody or something because when it came back and he found it, it had blood on its mouth. He says he knows nothing about the noise from the restaurant office and wasn't there. Now, keep in mind, when we're calling this guy the suspect, it means that the police suspect that he may have committed a crime. It doesn't mean he did, but they're questioning because they suspect he may have. Now, the police have located some evidence from two different crime scenes in the area. The first crime scene was the restaurant office. In the restaurant office, they found a sandwich that looked like it had a small bite taken out of it, but it was dropped on the floor. And then they also found a blood splatter on the floor of the office. The second crime scene where they found some evidence was the suspect's own car trunk. And in that car trunk, wrapped in a garbage bag, they found a blood-stained t-shirt, a knotted electrical cord, and hair that matched his dog's hair. Now, you'll be provided with a lot of evidence in this case, and you'll have to examine it closely and try to figure out what you can based on the evidence that's provided to you. On this first of the evidence slides here, you're presented with blood types. Blood types from the blood in the office floor, from the blood on the t-shirt, from the suspect's car trunk, from the suspect himself, and from the missing owner's mom and dad. Now, why would we want to collect blood from the missing owner's mom and dad? Well, it's because we don't have the missing restaurant owner to test. We don't know exactly what his blood type was, but we might be able to figure that out based on his mom and dad. You'll have some questions to answer about that bit of evidence, and then the next evidence slide has DNA fingerprints taken from blood samples. There is one from the restaurant floor, from the t-shirt in the car trunk, from the owner's mom and dad again, and the suspect. And of course, once again, since we don't have the restaurant owner to take samples from, we don't have his DNA fingerprint. You'll have some questions to answer about that one. And then there is DNA sequences from blood hemoglobin. DNA sequences can be different for each person, and sometimes you can find small differences even in something like blood hemoglobin when you're comparing one person to another or a person to a dog. And in this bit of evidence, you're looking at the blood from the office and the t-shirt again, from the suspect, from the owner's mom and dad, and we've included the DNA sequence from the suspect's dog on this one. You'll have some questions you've got to answer about that one. And then at the end of the presentation, there will be a slide for you to make your decision about whether the suspect is innocent or guilty, and tell why you think he is innocent or guilty. Now, take your time with this, work through the information slowly, and think about it as you go, because your decision here, I mean, if this was happening in the real world, could either send an innocent man to prison for the rest of his life or let a killer loose on the streets. So do your best, and if you got any questions, just let me know. Good luck.